Only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this valuable Power Retail webinar session. My name is Grant Arnott. I'm the publisher of Power Retail, and I'll be introducing our guest speaker very shortly. But before the introduction, some quick housekeeping. First of all, the bathrooms. I hope you know where they are because this is a webinar and I'm not going to be able to help you. Mobile phones, please turn them to silent. I can't ridicule you if it goes off because I won't hear it, but that's beside the point. You're going to want to pay attention because this is going to be a great session. Post your questions to the dialog box in the sidebar. We'll let our speaker complete her presentation and then we'll field your questions at the end of the session. Now, we've got a big session ahead this morning, so please get comfortable. Customer engagement is one of the key drivers of omnichannel retail success, and today you're going to learn how brands like Cafe Nero, Performance Bicycle and others use online communications to drive both online and offline purchases, how they turned online communications into increased loyalty and boosted conversion rates by 20%. You're going to get a snapshot of the key consumer trends and behaviours that will define your customer engagement strategy, and that's why you have a true competitive advantage tuning in today over those who didn't. So presenting today's webinar, I'm pleased to introduce Antonia Edmunds, Asia Pacific Sales and Geo Expansion Leader for IBM Marketing Cloud. So just to let you know, Q&A again will be held at the end of the session, but you can fire these at us anytime via the webinar dialog box. And now I'd like to hand over to Antonia to take you through how to fully maximise ROI through a customised engagement experience. Thanks, Antonia.
Thank you very much, Grant, and I hope you can all hear me. Thank you all for joining this morning. So I'm going to jump right in because we've got quite a lot to cover today. I'm going to talk you through some trends specific to Australia and New Zealand and Asia Pacific as a whole. Talk you through as well some specific kind of tips, best practices, as well as some examples of what clients and others are doing to maximize ROI in this space. So ultimately, I think when we look at the changing landscape of retail, there are really three key trends that need to be taken into consideration when planning a successful strategy. And I'm going to really focus today on the first two of these. Ultimately, consumers are more connected, more empowered, and more instrumented than ever before. On average, consumers are now using more than 2 technologies during their own shopping processes. They are more interconnected to other people than ever before. And with this greater access to and use of technology comes greater access to information. So the number of sources from which consumers can gather information also continues to grow. This newly instrumented, interconnected, and intelligent, smarter consumer sees her world through a different lens, and a lens that highlights what is possible. And as a result, she has much higher expectations. She expects a heightened customer experience from every retailer at every stage of her interactions with the retailer's brand. And this demanding consumer has clear preferences and expectations, which as retailers we really need to start to meet. Consumers also expect seamless interactions across all the channels that they're using to interact with the brand. Your customer's brand experience can bolster brand loyalty, or it can undermine it. The experience your customer has while interacting with your brand can deepen the relationship she has with you, or it can serve to leave a bad taste in her mouth. Of course, this brand experience is channel agnostic. Your customer doesn't see separate channels. They don't see store, web, mobile, call center. Your customer simply sees your brand and expects that seamless experience, regardless of how many channels, regardless of how many business units you have, or inventory pools, or whatever it is that you have. Maintaining customers' loyalty and trust has become harder, but also more important than ever, as consumers can shift providers in a moment when they're unhappy. Knowledge of the consumer, their shopping behavior, and how to influence them has become a science, and successful brands and retailers will have to learn to adapt to this reality, and that's what I want to walk you through today. So what we see here is on this sort of page of stats. I just want to talk you through a couple of the key trends here, because the evolution of technologies available to consumers has resulted in an evolution in consumer behavior and expectations, and all of these serve to create new challenges for retailers and marketers. So I think here what jumps out at me is the fact that 9 out of 10 consumers say that they want to share their opinions about their brand's experiences with other consumers. And a large majority of consumers are also saying that they will look for advice from a social site, and those opinions will sway their decision making. So these opinions are not just about the products they buy. Nearly 2 in 5 consumers post comments about their experiences with retailers one or more times each week. And with mobile devices, with everybody nearly 24/7, consumers are rarely without a mechanism that can allow them to express their thoughts about their experiences as they happen. This means, of course, then, that customer experience is the new battleground. This is surpassing price and product as the key brand differentiators. The vast majority of organizations, of course, recognize the power of customer experience. According to Gartner, as you can see here, nearly 90% of companies expect to compete mostly on the basis of customer experience. That was about 36% 4 years ago. But of course, that's easier said than done. Only in the same study, only 3% of organizations feel that they are where they need to be, and only 1% of customers feel that vendors consistently meet their expectations. So that gap is enormous. To close this, a winning resale strategy is what I'm going to jump in today, and I'm going to show you how you can drive better engagement, loyalty, and ultimately ROI by working to a more personalized strategy. We know that today's consumer is overloaded. Everyone can now reach them wherever they are, and it's driving them crazy. And we can see this because we see increasing use of technologies around ad blocking, custom opt-out rates are increasing, and of course you have high numbers of disengaged or unengaged consumers on your databases. They're ignoring your messages. Comscore says this nicely. They've advised brands to refocus on the user experience. This ad blocking is a wake-up call, they say, for advertisers and publishers to improve the quality and experience of the advertising that supports online content. Equally, for marketers, there are enormous internal challenges as well. There is a dizzying array of technologies at our disposal. This is the marketing technology landscape that Scott Brinker at chiefmartech.com releases every year. And don't worry if you can't make any of this out. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, the fact that you can't make anything out of this on this slide. In 1 year, we have gone from 2,000 different technologies that marketers have access to and are using to 4,000 entries in this landscape. And each of these technologies represents another data silo, another place where customers' data can reside and be collected. And that in itself presents an enormous challenge. So I don't think having data is generally an issue. We all have enormous amounts of customer data, but being able to make sense of it, get insight from it, and leveraging it is where a lot of the challenge is. And without doing that, that experience can feel very disconnected and siloed. IBM ran a survey late last year with eConsultancy called The Rise of Marketing Technologists. And they said, in that we found that the difficulty of integrating marketing systems has been a challenge for marketer, although many acknowledge that companies have to do that in order to get the best results. From those results, it seems that Australia and New Zealand marketers have largely done the hard work, as almost 2/3, 62% of company respondents say that they now have an integrated marketing solution. But that said, there are still a lot of non-integrated point solutions. 38%, for example, said that they are not fully integrated. The single barrier to more effective use of marketing technology was cited to be a lack of internal resources, as well as the difficulty in integrating these types of software. So with technology becoming more sophisticated and the number of digital platforms increasing, it's not surprising to see that marketing teams feel too stretched to get the most out of their software. However, even if you're not using a single vendor marketing stack, it is very important that the tools you work with are easy to integrate and don't lock you in. In a recent AdAsia interview, Damien Cummings, who's the global head of digital marketing for Standard Chartered, said, "The paradox today is that we have the technology to deliver highly personalized messages, even down to a one-to-one level. Yet we don't have enough people to have a one-to-one dialogue with our customers. But it's only when you're truly relevant and amazing that customers will allow you into their personal space." So what stands out for me with this eConsultancy study is that 37% of the customers say that their favorite retailer understands them. That's not any retailer, that's favorite retailer. So again, that customer experience gap, despite all the effort that's going in with brands and marketers that I speak to in terms of integrating and trying to make better use of data, it still exists. So once you connect your ecosystem, I think that for me, the behaviors are really the key to understanding your customers. What I do is far more important and telling than what I say. So once you do connect that ecosystem, this means that your entire strategy can be anchored around those critical behaviors, those key behaviors that will help you drive relevance because you're connected. And so also then what this means is that the channel that you're delivering the message becomes less important. It's more about defining an overall strategy around a customer journey. The first thing that needs to happen is that you need to be able to show your customer that you understand them, that you know them, and that's what customers are really saying that they don't yet get the sense of from their favorite retailers. And to do that, firstly, you need to be able to recognize them, to know them in every channel, in every way that they're interacting with your brand. Note the importance here of connecting data without building yet another data mart or data warehouse. It's also about connecting the data that matters. So with every campaign, with every program or tool, you need to ensure that you're relentlessly pursuing a single identity strategy to ensure that you're not just creating another data silo. This means then you can start, once you have this concept of a single identity, you can know your customer as a single person record across all your channels. So we do this nicely and can illustrate this here. Jane, for example, with single identity, you can start to see that the person who tweeted your brand is the same person who downloaded your app but hasn't logged in, is the same person who bought a high-value item in store last week. This record is one Jane. It's not 4 different Janes in every place that you've collected that information. So it's important to aggregate all the information across all the channels as simply as possible, because that way, as a brand, you're going to be able to understand her overall value, as well as her sentiment, her behaviors, her intent, and that will give you true insight and be able to enable you to be far more relevant in the communications that you then provide them, as well as provide a more seamless experience for her. Once you're bringing in the behavioral and demographic data into your marketing database against a single identity, you can begin using those criteria in very simple segmentation queries, again, putting you as the marketer in control of how you're using that data and surfacing those behavioral data points, touch points, to create segments that you see here that can be used for either one-time queries or segments. It can be used for dynamic content or personalization queries as well. So behaviors like this, as you can see here, around purchase information, offline activity, app activity, social activity, these behaviors can be brought in to really drill down into finding the personas or the people that you want to target, and they can be used in a transactional way, as you see here, as part of a simple segmentation query, using behaviors like last purchase to include them into a specific store. But where behaviors become really powerful is when they're used to inform a contact's path through a multi-step campaign, and where behaviors determine the next step or the next action and the next content. So instead of creating a simple one-off query to identify who gets what, you can set up specific rules and logic to help drive what contact receives based on either actions or inactions. Of course, with automation, once you've set this up, the marketing platform can do all the work for you, and you can really set and forget it. It also, of course, gives you scale. The ability to provide personalization and automation at scale is key as you're looking beyond just a small set of customers. Again, the e-consultancy survey that we ran showed something quite interesting. It showed that marketing automation tools were not at the top of the investment chart for most companies in Australia and New Zealand. However, they were seen, marketing automation tools were seen as a top ROI performer, both for company and agency respondents. So about 57% of company respondents said they'd offered good or excellent ROI. So again, the success is there. Taking it a step further, one of the ways in which we can begin to understand our customer database better and give insight into the persona makeup of people that represent the customer database is through scoring. So not everyone you've captured is going to be the perfect fit for your service, solution, or product. So scoring gives us a way to determine which ones we think are the right fit, in addition to taking actions and displaying behaviors that show serious signs of intent. So, for example, we work with many clients who apply an RFM scoring model. And that analysis can then, applying that to the scoring model can give you very valuable analysis as you begin to customize content and tailor communication strategies to the individual. So as you know, I'm sure you've heard, stat that's out there is that it costs 5 times more to obtain a new customer than to acquire a new one. And scoring models allow us to take note of behaviors that may indicate waning engagement and take proactive steps to avoid them before they kind of drop off your list. It's also shown that, single purchase visitors to your website, the vast, about 8% of them come from customers that have purchased more than once. But those customers are the most valuable ones that you have. They account for 40% or more of the revenue. So finding out the single-time buyers through scoring allows you to more easily segment them so that you can target those ones specifically to turn them into repeat customers and hopefully brand advocates. So once you've connected your data and identified some of those behaviors, it really comes down to differentiating your message. And that sounds easier than I know that it is. It's all about content, context, and of course, channel. One of the first steps is to identify those behavioral triggers that will help drive and inform the cadence of your messaging to your customers, so putting them at the center of the experience. So where every customer's actions or inactions drive the timing and content of what they receive. So this list here is from a partner presentation from a revenue automation partner of ours at our IBM Amplify customer event last month in Orlando. And you'll see here, notice that, this is not an exhaustive list. And you will quickly be able to think of others, I'm sure, including offline behaviors, etc. But notice that all these behavioral triggers that you can use to drive loyalty or engagement or purchase. And in particular, notice how only 2 of them follow the marketer's schedule. So all the rest are really centered around your customer and what's going to trigger the next piece of content in their journey. So then once you've identified those triggers and started to map out that journey, it's about increasing the levels of personalization with your message to deliver more journey-aligned personalized content in every channel. So, I'm really talking about beyond just dear first name and even beyond standard, dynamic content. And it's about bringing in personalized, you think about bringing in personalized product recommendations based on that person's behaviors, previous purchase, viewing behaviors, browsing behavior, or their purchase history. So, what they've previously purchased, what they've previously browsed, or, what others have done. So other people who also looked at this product went on to buy X, etc. And by doing this, you can start to have some pretty dramatic results around ROI. These capabilities are often self-learning, and I think as we see more cognitive solutions permeate our marketing tool set, we can expect these to quickly get even more intelligent and help marketers be even more relevant. Multivariate testing and real-time personalizations are other ways to increase personalization and give you the ability to easily test offers, content, and creative across multiple channels with more complex and dynamic ways of displaying offers, again, with additional self-learning capabilities. So here's what this might look like for a website or email builder, for example, for real-time personalization. And you can see that this, by identifying areas within your creative that you want to start building this real-time content personalization. So, traditional A/B testing and multivariate testing ultimately identifies a single winner amongst test options. Here, the rules advisor would go deeper than a winner-takes-all approach and would identify groups of customers who prefer different test variations. The advisor would then recommend a set of rules that would ensure that each customer gets their preferred content. So again, adding additional level of sophistication and complexity to those testing rules. As a marketer, then you can then review some of those recommended rules and adjust them either based on experience or personal, or insights, and test the recommendations against your own rules to maximize the performance there. So here's an example of a client of ours, and I want to show what they launched a little while ago with a very simple, static, single remarketing email. So in this example, those people who abandoned the For Him category, the For Him section on the website, received this email that includes their current best-selling items for men. And you can see this is fairly simple. It's static content as a kind of first step. And I've worked with other retailers as they identify some high value categories or product pages that they can use to run similar programs. It doesn't need to be the whole site, and it can be pretty simple to start with, as you can see here. Obviously, as a next step, there's an opportunity to increase that level of personalization by bringing in product recommendations more linked to the other behaviors or purchase history of that person if appropriate. Once they launched that first one, it worked so well that they have launched since then an additional 8 category browse remarketing emails that you can see here as an example. From a results perspective, the results have been, really interesting, as you can see. So this is what some of the stats they've given us. You can see that clearly for every triggered communication, purchase confirmation, browse remarketing, the cart abandon, and the notifications for a product level if it's been out of stock, for example, the volume, of course, goes down as you move further down that funnel, but the conversion rates are, significantly higher by implementing those basic triggered, and this is just in email here. So I want to dive into social and mobile in particular quickly, because I think that it's important to single out these channels that are more key than ever in terms of how to drive engagement, and I think really present a whole new set of challenges for us as marketers. You don't need convincing, I'm sure. I want to show you a few numbers for Australia in particular, as well as touch on some of the key ideas and data points in these channels. But first of all, what is mobile? And mobile, I think, is just so much more than the channel. And the lines of what mobile is versus what social is versus, what a channel is and a device is really continuing to blur. It's all of these things. It's about the type of device, the data that you can collect from them, the triggers associated to it, your location, the context and usability, and all of these things are things that you as marketers will need to be thinking about. What's also interesting to me is the definition of mobile first. I think many people define it as designing an online experience for mobile first before desktop or web. And whilst this is good, I don't think you can stop there. Marketers really need to completely rethink the customer experience and remap out their customer journey, especially as it relates to this largest growing demographic of new consumers, the millennials, who are the heaviest mobile users. I'd also argue that in many cases, and many, particularly in Asia Pacific, see the requirements around mobile only, not just mobile first, and some of the newer brands I see doing that quite well. Of course, all of this is also inextricably linked to social and the way that people engage and interact. So this is from We Are Social's study from January this year on sort of global digital, social, and mobile statistics. And here I'm just showing you Australia. They didn't break out New Zealand per se, but here is Australia. And I think some of the key things here is around the penetration rates there that you see amongst the population for active social media users, mobile connections, and mobile social users. These penetration rates down there, you can see, I think, a slightly smaller type, are they're twice that of Asia Pacific as a whole. And already Asia Pacific's penetration rates are higher than the global average. So I think clearly in Australia we have a highly mobile audience who are also very active on social. So it's a demographic we can't ignore. Well, what does that mean for me as a marketer, you might think? And I think it really means everything that you think about in terms of usability, the ease of reducing those barriers, those friction points in m-commerce. It's about the right messaging, the design, the data and insights. And of course, engagement, being mobile first with that focus on social. It's too much for today, and I'll touch on it in a second, but I think that the way that you as a brand can drive ROI and engagement on some of these newer tools in social apps, for example, such as Snapchat, is going to be very different from how you would on your website or via email. But that does that mean that you need to think about it? And I would say almost certainly. So the reach is not quite there, and the rules of engagement are very different and in some cases very challenging. But the emergence of these messaging apps is going to be a big focus in my mind as retailers work out how to have better conversations in every touch point. So how do you then go about joining that conversation? And I think social networks and social applications, apps are, hard places for brands to be, but it is possible to join the conversation. For some of the emerging channels, it's also hard to measure ROI at this point, and the data isn't always there. We're not getting a lot of reporting statistics back from some of these channels. But for some brands, with the right demographic and the right strategy, the right messaging, there may be an early mover advantage to be had here. And I think with some of these, in some of these cases, it's all about sort of the visual aspect, the engaging and fun aspect. And there's a huge amount of noise around authenticity. I think that that's becoming increasingly important, especially for the younger generation. And that really is evident in Snapchat, for example, where you can't really have these perfectly curated brand experiences. It's much more kind of real-time, immediate, and authentic than that, and that's resonating very well. For other types of channels, which I'll show you, for other, mobile channels and devices, it may be more about providing informational, time-sensitive, timely content. And again, opportunities to use these channels effectively is often around very time-sensitive events. Geo-targeting, so locational-based offers and events are also good ways to market in these places. Also driving and connecting those offline to online and vice versa. Again, there's a lot of focus on customer service. So how are you going to respond to your customers effectively who may be using these channels to, either rave or probably more likely rant about some experiences that they've had. And also a lot of opportunity for engagement and data collection around surveys and games and puzzles, etc. I've not really talked about analytics today. There's obviously a huge place for analytics and hugely important, and we'll see that in some of the examples at the end. But here on a micro level, using some analytics tools, inbuilt analytics tools, to understand where your customers are, what devices are they using, where are they viewing your messages, on a one-time or regular basis over time. And analytics like this gives us a great way in which we can begin to prioritize the layout, the devices, and that you're sending out information on. And it also can help you build a case for making mobile more of a priority within your own organization. And of course here, then that, by quickly testing across browsers, devices, and so on, you can then more easily design for it that makes it more accessible to the people who are actually relevant to your audiences. I'm going to jump into SMS quickly and just give you some examples of how brands are using SMS increasingly. And I would say that here in Asia Pacific, we're further ahead than our friends in North America and Europe in terms of brands successfully using SMS to engage with their customers as a channel. So here's an example from Ameritrade, and I think the important here, if you can see that there, is the immediacy of the information getting to the customer. It's a really good way for transactional information and alerts to be sent because of that immediacy there. Another example here is Grubhub's survey. They conduct surveys and alerts that allows customers to respond with feedback on the experience, which promotes both engagement but also helps influence customer sat information and may help define your strategy moving forward. Here's a nice example. Macy's sends text alerts that opens up a coupon, a voucher that can be stored in your wallet for later redemption. I think that's a really clever way of kind of, again, bringing in additional creativity and messaging, but also providing a sort of value add and bringing in kind of offline to online loyalty capabilities. Here is a customer example of appointment reminders as well. So ultimately, mobile again is beyond SMS. We've also got push, and apps really allow you to deliver more dynamic messages. Anything from kind of simple notifications that you see on the screen here, up to kind of rich messages, rich push messages, which are fully HTML enabled. And again, you can do anything from a basic broadcast message, which would go to every app user, as you can see here on the left-hand side in the H&M example, letting all customers know about a new collection. But then right down, you can also, of course, drive extreme personalizations, like the ones that we all want to have with our customers. So you can see that message on the right. That message is based on location, it's based on user behavior, it's based on a unique user's activities. In this case, the customer would have traveled into a high allergy zone and received a reminder to take their meds. So you can leverage push in all sorts of ways. Again, very good around anything that's location-based, in-store alerts, flash sales, retentions, and so on. I'm going to jump into social advertising. I'm just touching on some of the key trends that I'm seeing, so I know that I'm jumping around a little bit. But bringing the same tenets in terms of using data, leveraging behaviors to get more intelligent with your strategy can also be applied into your social advertising strategy. So of course, I know social advertising is a digital mega trend you're, I'm sure, already thinking about and probably doing. It's growing very, very rapidly. Again, it's where your customers are. It's where they're most engaged. And it's a good way for you as brands to cut through and seed by the right customers to help, boost your acquisition strategy in particular. So, one very effective way to get more targeted, more automated is to, expand your reach with lookalike models and preferably automated through your marketing platform. So lookalike models would take your, allow you to extend your reach by targeting two types of audiences. One would be existing customers who aren't responding via other channels. So if you can automate the syndicating of contacts through to your social networks, and say, because they're the ones that aren't opening your emails or haven't logged into their app or haven't purchased in a certain time frame, and be able to target them very specifically with an ad just for them. But also you can use it to find new contacts who look and act like your best customers. So the key to success here is not only targeting the right audience, but also delivering the right offer, which is totally on your shoulders as marketers. But again, by connecting that into your marketing platform really means that you can be a bit more efficient and more targeted and more accurate in your approach. We've got a nice example. We worked with City of Melbourne last year in their Spring Fashion Week. I know that's coming up again very soon. And they used our social audiences capabilities and sold out their major, one of their shows in record time as a result. And this worked because they knew what their best customers looked like. And they simply told social audiences to find us more customers like this and automated that process. And you can see the results there, which is very pleasing for them. So bringing it all together, I think all these triggers. If we go back to that list of behavioral triggers, all of these triggers have underlying identifying behaviors that can be collected in any channel. So if you start to layer on a channel view, all of these relate to behaviors or triggers in email, in web, in social, of course on mobile. Perhaps in the call center activity, in-store, e-commerce sites, and so on. But it's both about thinking about your channels against those triggers, both on an inbound perspective. So both in terms of being able to use those channels to get the information that will indicate those behaviors, but also then using those behaviors to drive the content and the timing of your outbound messages. So it really becomes about using, behavior and information from one channel to inform messaging on another, and that's how you start to connect that experience to your customers. So I'm going to touch on some concepts around, what I think is going to come up, what I think we need to all be thinking about, if not already, before going into the examples at the end. Artificial intelligence, many of you probably will have heard, I hope, of Watson. And Under Armour is one of the many companies working with IBM's Watson. This is a sports apparel company, and they combine user data from its app with third-party data and research on fitness, nutrition, and so on. And Watson helps make sense of that data. So, for example, a 32-year-old woman who is training for a 5K race can use the app to create a personalized training and meal plan based on her, size, her goals, her lifestyle. And the app would be able to map routes near her home or office, taking into account the weather and time of day and location. It can watch what she eats. It offers suggestions on how to improve her diet, to improve performance, etc. So really, I think, AI is where we're going to see a lot more intelligence coming and be accessible to marketers. Sentiment analysis, product recommendations, image and voice recognition. There are many areas where AI has the potential to allow social networks to improve at scale, but also communications to improve at scale. And I think that that's an area where we'll see more and more activity and capabilities come in. I also think that, as we've seen with many of the disruptive brands, I mean, if you think of Uber and Airbnb and, as well as other brands such as Amazon, it's all about those brands have done a very good job at putting the customer in control. They've really, they're DIY-like, companies. And, as a result, consumers are very used to being self-serve and want to have that convenience and want to be in control. And so chatbots, such as this would make it very easy for consumers to get answers, information on their own terms. I think the use case here, there's very obvious ones around travel. So, on your way to the airport, emailing your hotel, or rather chatting with the hotel bot to ensure that they remember your pickup or to arrange a pickup, changing your room, checking in, upgrading. And I think that, again, we'll see more and more beyond just travel that start to come into effect. I think what's interesting, TechCrunch says that Messengers, Facebook Messenger's current active user base exceeds the total number of iPhones ever sold. Messaging apps have more active users than social networks. So, there's a huge audience there and a huge way that you'll be able to, increase the number of people, if you like, having conversations on a one-to-one basis with your customers through a bot. Of course, I think there are some challenges to be overcome, around natural language capabilities, being able to predict intent, and also know when to escalate to a real person if necessary. So again, emerging there nicely. Wearables, I think also, is moving quite quickly beyond the sort of Apple Watch and the Fitbit. I think we're going to see increasing levels of sophistication and also cross-brand cooperation here. For example, I know that Samsung has released an item called the Welt, which is a healthcare gadget disguised as a leather belt and tracks that person's waist size and their eating habits. It also detects how many steps people take and how long they spend sitting down. So again, that's information that may be useful to many other brands out there as well. So I think we'll see a bit more around that. I also, I think, again, we're also going to be seeing, real-life examples of augmented and virtual reality. And I think it's another way to really further engage and wow customers by letting them become completely immersed in an overall experience. And I think we've seen some examples there, again, more in the travel space, often, hotel experiences. Virgin Atlantic has a digital adventure app that allows customers to really experience the entire luxury travel experience. So, I think that there will be, if done right, again, offers another way to really engage with consumers. So then I'm just going to touch on some examples of customers that we've worked with and how they are, really helping optimize the experience and create kind of customer engagement for high ROI. So Performance Bicycles, they have a number of stores, and in those stores they're welcomed by staff made up of avid cyclists who help guide their shopping experiences. But unfortunately, visitors to the website weren't really experiencing the same welcome and the same kind of concierge-like experience. And online sales, as a result, was suffering, particularly because they're high-value items, of course. Customers complained that the site was difficult to navigate, people were abandoning their carts, and so really they needed to, they wanted to revamp its approach to e-commerce and improve the online experience and right through to the engagement side as well. So first of all, they spent some time analyzing the website, looking for struggles to pinpoint the problems that were driving customers away. They were able to look at the places that customers paused. They did this using a product called Tea Leaf, and were able to see the products that were put in the cart and then removed, and the points at which they abandoned their carts altogether. And by doing that, they were able to formulate a plan to optimize that experience. As a result, they redesigned the website that guides customers through the shopping experience much more as if they were in the physical shops, just in the same way. They also Performance Bicycle improved the integration between the online and physical shops, so allowing customers to move between sales channels more fluidly and offering a new sort of ship from store option. And ultimately, they also used a lot of this insight and behavioral data and have that flow seamlessly into their marketing platform to personalize the outbound marketing messages to, again, provide a much more personalized and rich customer experience. You see some of the results here. Within 4 months of launching the redesigned website, Performance Bicycle saw web traffic to its e-commerce site triple. showing that the cycling community was really hungry for such a resource. They also report that visitors to the Learning Centre, which is part of the website that they have, are 20% more likely to make a purchase than visitors referred from elsewhere. I think, as a result, they've really have a reputation, increasing reputation as being a very thorough, informative, and valuable online resource, as well as a sales website there. So I think good example there. I also want to touch on Fresh Direct, which is a online grocery store. And they really wanted to stay ahead of the trend of customers increasingly shopping for their groceries online. They've developed a solution that looked at all the contact history data, survey responses, browsing behaviors, to provide that single customer view that I talked about across the digital channel. And that data, that insight, is then used to create highly granular customer segments, which are targeted with very precisely tailored marketing campaigns. So, for example, customers who purchase mainly low-salt, non-dairy, gluten-free foods would receive an entirely different marketing communication stream than those who follow less restrictive diets. They also use this data and use this solution to uncover, respond to, and anticipate trends amongst customers, which has allowed them to be a lot more nimble and accurate in what they're doing. So they've also discovered through doing this that different communication channels work better under different circumstances. For example, for courting new customers, that's done best through direct mail, whilst they found that email is better for retention. And so now they can create, with just an hour's notice, ad hoc campaigns that they can use in a variety of ways. So, for example, sending a free delivery offer to a customer who has abandoned their basket may be the perfect way to incentivize them to finish shopping, but only if it's delivered on time. So again, if it's not, then that offer would be less relevant, less appealing to that person. So, they've gotten much more agile as a result of the solution, so 75% faster, as well as being able to improve revenue because they can now create new products based on customer preferences and eliminate less popular choices as a result. And they've also seen an increase in customer sat scores because they can be more precise in the campaigns and promotions that meet the shopper's needs more precisely. And finally then, Cafe Nero. So they have really done a great job in tying together, their offline and online experience for obviously a very offline brand to promote loyalty. So they run a sort of very specific campaigns because what they found was that their customers were not very aware of a lot of the promotions that they have, and they wanted to make the campaigns more personal across more channels to result in greater customer participation, of course, increased ROI. So what they did is they identified their prepaid card holders and anticipated future prepaid card holders and had those as the core focus for their communications. And then they really wanted to use that insight to turn new customers and card holders into brand advocates. And so to do that, they deployed a personalized communication strategy. And as a result, you can see here they got 40% open rates. As 70% open rates as a result through these very targeted campaigns. So they did that by, through this sort of collecting everything as a single identity, they were able to do some quite in-depth persona segmentation. And at every touch point, they were able to collect more valuable data. So again, increasingly drilling down. So they've implemented a few things such as, a welcome campaign, monthly statements, top-up reminders, and so on. And so as a result, again, as I say, the loyalty card holders now visit and spend twice as much as the ad hoc customers. So again, they're really able to identify that high value segment and be more targeted as a result to see those results. So that's it. And I think it's really about, as retailers thinking about how to craft that perfect experience at scale, using, marketing tools that are able to integrate and automate a lot of these processes for you. And of course, at IBM, we do that every day with retailers all over the world. So and with that, I'll hand over to any questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Antonia. Round of applause from everyone. I'm sure I can hear it in the background there. So yeah, really appreciate that great presentation. We do have a couple of questions that have already come through, mostly around ROI specifically. So I've got one from Sharon. Conducting a customer survey and implementing strategies to measure and improve ROI from data gathered is easier said than done. But any advice here from your previous experience with clients on how to execute such a marketing campaign smoothly? So it's a customer survey and data gathering campaign. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say that I would probably separate out those questions. I mean, I think customer surveys are a really useful way of helping you as a retailer get information on your customers around preferences or around feedback, customer satisfaction. But I'm not sure that I would think about surveys as a way to test ROI, I guess. Unless you're able to, set a benchmark in terms of, you're able to make some correlation between customer satisfaction, for example, and, average spend per customer. And in which case, then you're able to set a KPI around, okay, well, if my goal is to increase the customer satisfaction score by X percentage points, then we can potentially measure the average spend or average value of those customers, and to see if that hypothesis is true. So I think, it really, the point I make about surveys is that you really need to think about why you're asking the information, and then to make it very clear what you're going to do with that information once you have it, because otherwise you're just asking people for their time and information, and then you may risk alienating people further if you don't then use that information well. So I think the preference center is a good example of that. If you're going to ask people how often they want to receive communications from you, and you give once a month as an option, and then you bombard them with daily deals, despite having asked that question, that's going to have more of an issue. So I think really think about how you're surveying, why you're doing it. Do you need to offer an incentive or not? And if you can set some KPIs around that are measurable, then you can measure, test, and refine accordingly.
Yeah, look, it's very 101, isn't it? But it still comes up often where there is a disconnect between the survey data and the decision making sometimes.
Right.
So I've got another question around a slide you showed around advanced segmentation. Someone's asked, is that a screenshot from IBM software that integrates data from multiple touch points? And they're interested in the scoring feature, saying that the scoring feature looks impressive and a great way to prioritize which groups of customers to target most effectively. So how does that scoring feature and how does that part of the technology work?
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks very much. That's very nice to hear. Yes, so they're completely integral and standard parts of IBM's Marketing Cloud, and I think that why that's particularly valuable is that it makes IBM's Marketing Cloud makes it very easy to integrate behavioral data and make it very actionable. So you saw in that screen around the advanced segmentation that it's very easy to select behaviors from multiple channels, so either from website tracking, from your app behavior, mobile behavior, social data if you're bringing that in, any other data that you're bringing in, e-commerce data. We're working with an automotive company bringing in onboard car computer data, for example. Any behavior that you can very easily bring in through our universal behavior exchange, and that makes that accessible in that rule builder that you saw. So no coding, and again you can layer on demographic information as well to get very granular. And then scoring is really interesting, and I think historically has been very much a B2B type concept. It's about lead nurturing, scoring based on company size and likelihood to buy, and et cetera, and using that to sync with a CRM and alert a sales professional. But actually we're seeing B2C companies use it increasingly, especially retailers. And again, very easy to build and test. You can build multiple scoring models in our platform, for example. And you can bring on recency, frequency, behavioral. You can degrade scores based on length of time. And customers are using that either to define segments, or they're using it just to overlay against their reporting, or they're using it to determine, say, the order of offers in their message.
Okay, and look, moving into 2016, you showed some, 2016 to 17, and really looking at 2017, for digital marketers, you showed some great insights on some of the trends, but everyone only has so many eggs. What basket would you be placing those eggs in for next year? If you're looking at something from a digital marketing perspective to really capitalize on for 2017.
Honestly, and for all but the most sort of youth-centered brands, I would say double down on the efforts that you already have today to make some kind of incremental improvements. I think despite the fact that we've been talking, I've been talking to brands about one-to-one personalization and, for 14, 15 years, the reality is that we're still seeing huge amounts of kind of mass marketing tactics. And so I think just by moving the needle in terms of personalization, automation, thinking about some journeys that you can automate and personalize, around the welcome, engagement, pre-purchase, post-purchase. I think, in some of the more traditional channels, I would say, and I'd include, email, push messaging, SMS, as well as website. I think that's where, really you can make some very, very big improvements with an awful lot of reach. I think, where it will take a bit more time and effort, and I think the difficulty is the unknown and the inability at the moment to really easily measure ROI is in some of those newer and sort of freer forums, I would guess, and I would say in terms of social, particularly in the apps. And OTT, I think that there are opportunities there, but I think unless your brand is one that's going to resonate and has some, is relatively well known, I think you're going to struggle there a bit to get involved if you're having to prioritize your resources. So I'd say double down on the basics first before kind of experimenting in the newer places.
Excellent. And look, one last one from me. I'm also interested in, you work for a small emerging tech company there, some people might have heard of, called IBM. What are some of the big transitional moves that IBM's making? I've spoken to some of your colleagues recently, actually, and I was really interested in how the business is actually transforming to be more relevant. And particularly around cognitive. I've been hearing a lot about this, and so I thought our readers might be interested in understanding more about the direction that IBM's headed.
Absolutely. I think that, you hit the nail on the head there, really. There's a few key transformations that are happening. I think, first of all, fundamentally, IBM is moving to become a lot more, there's an increasing focus on SaaS capabilities and cloud. But also, I think, the most interesting place where we're going to see the biggest impact is around cognitive. And I know that sounds really kind of big and kind of, I think there are some very real applications, particularly for marketers, that make it really exciting, because anything that can help us as marketers make get more intelligence from the data that we have, all that data that we have. A lot of it's very unstructured. A lot of it's in places where it's very hard to really make it actionable. And particularly in when you're talking about sort of around sentiment and speech recognition in multiple languages, but everything that IBM is doing around cognitive, I think, has a great application, and we're starting to bring that into our tool sets now. And so you'll start to see that in rule builders that will make proactive suggestions, bringing in other data sources around who to target with what, how to identify segments that you may never have otherwise thought about as a marketer. Also predicting the best time or being able to make those decisions on the best time to communicate with somebody in a particular channel with a particular message. So I think that's an area that's truly exciting. And then, of course, also we're making great strides around analytics and making analytics more usable and more intelligent in everything that we do. So really bringing together, looking at the whole environment within the customers, within a brand's kind of framework. So looking at all the digital touch points and as well as offline touch points, and then making that very visual. And I think that for a long time IBM has been known to really service the IT industry and have deep data capabilities and analytics capabilities. What I'm seeing now around in this transformation is ways of making that very visual, very digestible for line of business users. So for instance in marketing, so that you can really visualize the customer journey, but underneath it is all of that heritage in the kind of rich data analytics and power that we have there. So I think that's what I'm seeing.
Fantastic. Look, we're eating into people's lunchtime now. So, but yeah, great Q&A there. I really appreciate that, Antonia. I think everyone would have got a lot out of that presentation. So I do appreciate your time today. For everyone who was watching, we will be making the full presentation available on Power Retail within the next day or so. And yeah, thank you once again to Antonia Edmunds from IBM Marketing Cloud for that presentation. Thank you all for listening, and we'll head offline now. Thanks, Antonia.
Thanks, everybody.